Hello folks. So in this video we're going to learn how to install Docker and how to pull image, how the Docker image looks like, and we'll also understand what's the difference between the legacy deployment versus the Docker based deployment. And this is continuation of our Angular learning. If you get a chance, please go and watch my previous Angular website development lessons because we're going to use that for deploying through Docker image. And this video, we're mainly focusing on how we're going to install, download and install Docker and set up everything. And how do we make sure that Docker is working fine in your local. Okay, let's get started. So before we jump into installing the Docker, let's understand what is Docker and why we need Docker and the advantages. So in legacy deployment, our legacy, the way we deploy our application, usually we'll have a physical machine. We just go, we'll have operating system, and we would deploy the web server. For example, you have a Angular or you have a Java application. How do you deploy? Usually, you just install the Apache. Just a good example. Many people use Apache, and use Apache, and you put your all your libraries and deploy it, correct? And it start running in your physical machine. Whereas in the microservice world, you don't need to go through the whole process like going to make as a lightweight component. Let's say that in the real world or the microservice world, the it will have like it's just considered your physical machine, and you'll have operating system on top. You'll have a Docker, and on top you'll have a lot of containers are running, which means that the microservice or the small container that run in your system, which will have a different layers. We will talk about how the layers looks like, how we can prepare the layer in next video. But in this video I'm going to give you a high level how the Docker looks like. So each container will have its own operating system, because let's say in this case you use Windows machine and you use Windows to supporting application server or web server, and you use the application. Whereas in a Docker, in a machine might be a Windows machine, but you can still use Unix or Linux or any other operating system in the image. And it has the server, it has application. Basically, it's a small lightweight container. It consists of all your packages. So you can the main advantages with this approach is you can dynamically increase the size and then dynamically reduce it. Let's compare here. You have a machine, physical machine. If you want to dynamically scale up, you cannot do it because it's a physical machine will have operating system, web server. You need to set up another physical machine where you have to buy a machine. You need to install operating system. You need to install web server, and you need to install application and start running. Whereas in Docker, that's very simple. You can just take a multiple copy of same container, because you store as a small tiny image which has all the information needed for your application. Yeah, if you're new to Docker, I think it will little get confused, but in my following videos I will go in detail how the real the Docker looks like, and how we can create our own Docker image. We'll have more detailed session coming up. This video mainly give the high level. You understand what is Docker, how it works. So in the Docker world, you have a container on top. You have small containers, and you have four containers. For example, I can scale down dynamically in a minute just to have one container. Let's say you have the application. The application today you are launching a product, and you cannot predict how the volume or how the request comes from the client. You predict like, okay, I'll make it 10,000 client or 10,000 requests from the client for something, but suddenly it spikes like 20,000, 30,000. How do you dynamically scale up your application in a real world? So that's where the Docker plays a very good role, where you can dynamically scale up your service, and you can keep getting all the requests and you can process it. That's a main advantage in the Docker. And another problem in legacy world we face, You install some softwares in your applications. For example, you have development and testing and production platform environments where you do your testing everything in development. When you move your code or package to the upper level, what would happen sometimes you get in a problem of version mismatch, or you might be a code version mismatch, which again create a problem on conflicts. So the Docker avoid all this problem because you're going to make it a package which contains all the versions. So you're going to use the same package to the upper version. So there's no possibility of changing version because it whatever you download the package information, still you're going to use same version for the other version, other environments. So that's other good advantage with the Docker, and not just Docker, any container. But Docker is very famous across all the IT industry. And of course, the less CPU memory utilization. If you have one two small containers, you don't need to have such a big any server. You can have a small Docker because it's very lightweight. You just need operating system, you need Docker software, and you can manage your container. And it's easy to, so like you have a, for example, if you're a developer, you check in your code, you check out your code in some repo. Similar way, you can store your image, which means that you can push your image to the repository like this, and you can pull the image whenever you need. So you kind of store entire the image. When I say image contains the operating system, server or packages you need for your application to run, and your application code. So all together as an image you store in the repository. So whenever you pull, you don't need to install any additional softwares. It will just already installed inside the image. It will just it has all the libraries. It just get installed when you start your container. This is the main advantages of installing Docker. I hope now you got the little bit high level ideas, what is Docker and where do we use. And let's get into the real world example and how we can download install the Docker. So installing Docker, it's very simple like usual, the way we install the softwares. I given the link. Let's go and download Docker. Go to Google. You can just specify download Docker for I use Mac, so I can just specify Mac. If you use Windows, you can download software for the Windows. So for Mac, you have two chips, so you need to specify whether your laptop is Intel or the Apple new chips. So mine is Intel, so let me click Intel. So it downloads the Docker software, and it's very simple. So it will take a few seconds. I don't think it's not a huge software. It would complete in less than a minute. So once the Docker sound downloaded, you can open that. It's like very usual the software installation. So probably you can, I'm gonna skip this because I have already installed softwares. You get a usual console, you click and it will go to and install your application. So I'm gonna skip everything, and I'm not gonna install the software. So I'm done actually. So now you install your software. So basically you install soft Docker in your application. Like you have operating system, you install the Docker. Now let's see how you can make sure Docker is running in your application. Let's open the terminal. Let's say Docker version. Okay, so my computer and my machine, I use Docker version 2010.8 build. So whatever latest you get, you can install in your machine. This is very simple. Okay, let's see how do you know that now you understand how to install Docker and what are the commands you can use. There are a lot of commands, but very famous. Let's say I want to know what are the Docker images I already built or have it in my system. Let's the images, you can just very simple command Docker images. So basically Docker images provides all the list of Docker images in your system, I have so many images which I built very long ago, and it also has a version. So you can I will also explain how you can build the Docker image, how you can create the Docker file and everything. But in this video, it's going to be more focusing on how to install and use the Docker. And let's say, um, how do we see that we can run any Docker image? What is the syntax? Very simple. So if you're new, in Docker, in default given the image hello world. Okay, so it's as usual any software and install any programming you can use hello world. So let me run Docker run hello. I will tell you how this come into my laptop or machine. So now I ran the application. So what it says hello from Docker. So it says that the Docker is really working good and it's ready to start. So, but one thing you need to understand, how did I get the hello world? So as I explained here, so I already click when you go Docker. So in the run, it's trying to find the image in your local. If the image is not there, it will try to pull from the repository. So this is a Docker repository, and it's a public repository. You can also create your own account, make it private if you wanted, and you can sign in and you can pull image or you can store image in your repository. Like it's almost similar to the code cloud. Like you have, if you have a Git, you can store your code either public or private. You can similarly you can pull and push your images. So since the hello world is public, if you don't have the hello world, what it does is when you run this command, it will look in your local. If did not find, then it will try to pull from the Docker public space, and it will store in your local. So if you look at right, so you see I have the hello world list just downloaded from the public repository maybe a long ago when I installed. It's very simple. So you can, to run the Docker image, you can just simply give the Docker run hello world. I think now we learned in this video how to install Docker and how to see Docker installation working good. And also we learn what's the advantages of Docker and versus the legacy, the way of deployment. Because Docker come into picture for deployment. There is nothing changing in terms of programming. Still you're gonna use, for example, if you have any web application you developed using Angular and Java, you're going to do the same thing even if it's a Docker. There's nothing changing versus legacy versus the Docker. The only change is the way you deploy your application. Usually you deploy as a whole application. Now you can deploy as a container with the Docker commands and Docker software. That's going to be the big difference. Okay, I think now we will learn that. So next video probably I will take my own program. I will explain how we can build a Docker image using the my Angular the code I written. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like my channel. You can subscribe. Thank you.